So one thing that's missing from the coverage of the Jeffrey Epstein scandal is the voices of people who served in the Metropolitan Correctional Center with him or near the time that he did, where he met his end. And so to try to rectify that, we're joined now by journalist, activist, and former MCC inmate, Martin Gottesfeld. Marty, thank you so much for joining us.
No problem, Ryan. Thank you for having me.
So to set the stage here, can you talk about the time that you served inside the MCC and how that relates to Jeffrey Epstein's time there?
Okay, so I was there from November 2016 to early February 2017. Epstein died there about 2.5 years after I left. But at the time I arrived at MCC, Epstein had not yet been there. El Chapo had not yet been held there. And the facility was really kind of flying under the radar. People really weren't aware of it, even though that, attorneys and prisoners had been active trying to reform the facility for a long time. The facility was already dilapidated. The staff were already out of control. Disaster was very clearly on the horizon. Anyone could see it. But at the time, I was a contributor for HuffPost, and you were my editor there. And we published, quite a bit about the facility before it rose to national prominence. And so we were really kind of like the early warning system that, something was very likely to happen here.
All right. And so one of Epstein's, tell us about your connection to one of Epstein's cellmates.
So I understand it was Epstein's first cellmate, Nick Tartaglione. I was in the SHU on G tier. So the SHU's got like different halls. They're called tiers, wherever you can have cells, right? And like G tier in that SHU is like the most elite. It's where the high profile guys tend to go. And so I was already on G tier when Tartaglione came in, like was arrested fresh off the street, had never, seen a jail cell from the inside before. He was a cop, so, he had seen lockup, but had never actually experienced it for himself. And then, I understand that Nick was not Epstein's cellmate at the time of the death. And I think that's important to underscore here.
Right.
Yeah.
So what can you tell us about the way that the cameras work?
I can tell you a lot.
And we have this on A5, by the way. We can loop this. This is the video that Pam Bondi released. And Marty, you've certainly seen this by now. It's obviously, as Wired has said, spliced together. It's missing a second, and now people are actually saying, Ryan, 3 seconds.
3 minutes.
3 minutes. I'm sorry.
And they tried to explain away 1 minute as like a nightly systems reboot, but then there's apparently 2 other minutes. I should add, I've not double checked the digital forensics on this myself. One thing, given my background, the government alleges I'm a hacker with Anonymous and that I single-handedly orchestrated one of the largest cyber attacks the government had ever seen. So I just have to say I've not double-checked the digital forensics on this. So I'm going off of what Wired wrote. To my understanding, there's no meaningful contradiction. Like no one's come forward with an alternative theory or whatever. But I can't personally vouch for the digital forensics on the files. But I mean, that's a view from another tier. And so the tiers are stacked like one on top of another, and they're in different like arms shooting off from the main area in the SHU. And you can see the officers station there from visible from that tier. But obviously there's no cell doors, right? And so this doesn't really make a lot of sense. The video is not particularly useful for anything. And in that SHU, just so you guys know, because this is something that's not been covered, there's a camera in every cell. And on G tier, there's 2 cameras in every cell. And the problem is that guys cover them up, right? Like you're trying to use the bathroom. There's a camera pointing at you. Like, what are you going to do? You cover the camera up, right? And so pretty much at any given time in the occupied cell in that SHU, the camera's covered. Now, that's against policy, but the facility, I mean, what are they going to do? Send a team to every single cell every single day to uncover these cameras? Because the guys will just cover them back up again. You also, though, expect that they would have cameras in the hallway, that we would have a camera that's facing Epstein's cell door, right? And there's no explanation given for why that tape is missing or, what happened to that camera. And they're trying to say the cameras weren't working, the DVR system had problems with the hard drives, all this. Okay, in the floor above that SHU is the 10 South Special Administrative Measures Unit. Okay, this is national security stuff. This is like where the 9/11 guys were held. These are the guys who don't even get attorney-client privilege. Even their attorney-client meetings, their visits with their attorney are listened in on by DOJ. Right. This is the highest of high security, and they're saying that, the floor right below it that someone could use to access the 10 South unit had no working cameras, or the drives were bad. Epstein died a month, 2 months after El Chapo left. It strikes me as very unlikely the cameras would be allowed to get into that position, and very scary if in fact they were.
So, what's your sense of knowing people who kind of come in and out of that place? What's your sense of whether or not he would have been in a state of mind to have given up on his defense? Like, you've seen other white collar criminals come and go.
Yeah.
Do they? Because one argument is this guy's he felt like his life was over, and so that's a reason why he would just take his life. He had this high-flying life, jets, mansion, partying, the elites, and now all of a sudden he's here. So it makes sense that he would just be like, you know what, I'm out of here. I cannot take this abrupt shift. What's your read on knowing other people who've gone through that situation?
Personally, obviously can't comment to his particular state of mind,
Right.
or his mental health, right? I can say that generally speaking, I have two problems with the narrative that he took his own life. The first is that, any good attorney would have told him that he's got two things that are very important going for him. First, he's got the money to retain a vigorous defense team, right? And this can really matter because, like, I put this in my write-up. You only need look as far as Sean P. Diddy Combs, right, who just beat federal sex trafficking charges in the same courthouse brought by the same prosecutors who are going after Epstein, right? He had a big legal team. He did it. If you read the media and the press, you would have thought he was done for, but, he had the money for the lawyers and they squeaked it out, right? So I don't really buy it. And, Sean, Combs, he didn't kill himself. It's called hanging it up in prison parlance, but he didn't do it, right? Facing a very similar racket in the same courthouse. They actually held him in a slightly different facility, but it's also, very poor conditions. It's the ADX Max shoe in Brooklyn. And I've also done time there. I've done time in the shoe where Diddy was and in the time where Epstein was. So, you know what I mean? Like, he didn't hang it up. And then as to the second thing is that Epstein was in a position potentially to cut a deal, either with the Trump administration or with some future administration. He had no shortage of people that he could have informed on, right? And there's actually a federal rule of criminal procedure, it's Rule 35B, right, where the court can depart downward, can give a much lighter sentence. It can give a sentence lower than the statutory minimum. So even if he was facing, like, say, a statutory minimum of 10 years, the court could go below that statutory minimum if he had provided substantial assistance in prosecuting another individual, right? And so the guys that you think of in prison as being desperate enough to take their own lives are generally the ones, right, whose all their boys have figured them out, right? Everyone's ratted on them. They have no one left to sell out for a deal, right? That's the guy who's, in my opinion, the very large suicide risk. And here's the other thing too. Epstein was a Wall Street quant, right? And if you do any game theory study, you hear about the prisoner's dilemma, right, which is basically the question of, do you rat someone else out in jail? That's one of the core exercises in game theory. I'm sure Epstein was familiar with it. It would be very unlikely in my mind that he would not have heard of the prisoner's dilemma. And so, I've got these problems with the narrative.
And from your understanding of the layout of the jail, does the footage that we have cover all the ways in and out, or would there have been other ways that people could move around?
Also, the footage doesn't even show the main entrance to the shoe. Mm-hmm. That camera does not even show the main entrance to the shoe. The main entrance to that shoe actually has written above it, or had written above it when I was there, America's strongest shoe. It says that right as you walk into that shoe.
Right.
So if it showed the front door, that's what it would show. This is the footage from some ancillary tier that is, and again, it's built with this like central region where you have like a little law library cage and you have like the officer station. And then there are hallways shooting off in different directions and they're stacked one on top of the other. So you'll have like G tier above H tier, right? Like J tier above I tier. right? And they shoot off in all these different directions. The narration of the footage that I've seen shows that Epstein's tier was somewhere off way to the right of the footage that's been released, right? And there should be another tier camera, like the camera that you're seeing here, right? It's recording the people walking onto a tier, the entrance of which is below the camera, right? So anyone coming onto this tier has to cross this camera and be seen. There should be a camera just like that on the tier where Epstein's cell actually was, but we've not seen footage from that camera.
And so are there other things, as you've thought about this for years now, about the facility that people don't know? Like that you wouldn't know if you were just sort of a member of the public, that influence the way you see the allegation that Jeffrey Epstein killed himself? Like, are there things going on there that make you see this story differently than if you've never stepped foot inside the shoe, people would see it?
I think mostly the stuff that I've gone over. I mean, obviously knowing the facility itself and having experienced the staff, and this is all public record. I published it back in 2016 and 2017 at HuffPost and Shadowproof, and we dropped an article at The Intercept, I think in 2018 or 2019, right? So it's all out there. But I sued over this facility. I filed in federal court because of the conditions there. So yeah, I mean, it is. I will say that it is a place where people can feel particularly desperate, especially in the winter or the summer, because you freeze in the winter and you boil in the summer in that shoe. There's no air conditioning. The heat is insufficient. I had leaky water. There's cockroaches and rodents and everything in the shoe. You have to put something under in the gap under your cell door so stuff doesn't come in at night. So that, I mean, I can see how someone could potentially get somewhat desperate. But again, you have all these guys who are facing frankly, worse situations, who don't have the money for the attorneys, who have their friends fingering them, and they don't commit suicide. They don't die by suicide. About 3 or 4 dozen guys were on death row, sentenced to die for really heinous crimes, right? On the day that the Biden administration announced the commutation of their death sentences, right? None of those guys had killed themselves.
Can I ask also about the guards? You just mentioned that, and that's part of this story, is that the guards who were subsequently fired, they were distracted, they were asleep, they just missed what was happening. That also is an element that it seems insane to a layperson, and maybe it is insane, but what have you made of that?
So when I was there, you had a couple of COs who were good, a whole mess that were lazy, and some that were outright malicious. And that's pretty much the mix wherever you go in the Bureau of Prisons, in the U.S. Federal Bureau of Prisons. It's going to be that way in pretty much any facility. Certainly they're supposed to do half-hour rounds in any SHU. So a SHU is a special housing unit, and SHU, and it's pronounced like footwear, like shoe. But there's certain rules in the SHU, and they're supposed to be the same wherever you go in the federal prison system, right? And so they're supposed to do these half-hour rounds. We haven't seen camera footage that definitively answers one way or the other whether those rounds were done, but we're told that they were not done, and that there had been this long period before anyone had gotten to them. I find that realistic from my time there, because you pay attention, you hear when the guards are coming on rounds, and they definitely did miss rounds more than this.
Yeah, I would think, that part actually did square for me too, just knowing people. And in the middle of the night, like if you can get away with staying in your chair and closing your eyes and sleeping, you're probably going to do it. So that part of me kind of did track that. In the Army, they call it pencil whipping, when you're told to go make sure all of these Humvees have oil, sufficient amount of oil in it, and instead you don't do it, and you just check off that you did it. That's actually pretty standard bureaucratic laziness.
I mean, again, you see it in the Bureau of Prisons everywhere. But there were a couple of COs. There was one. His name was Ortiz, and he would make his rounds every half hour. And you'd see it from the light, because the light's off in the hallway at night, right? So you can see the flashlight coming and going. And I was up late writing a lot. I took 500 pages of notes in that shoot, because Rolling Stone had asked me to write down everything for a piece that they were working on about my case. So I have 500 pages of notes, date and timestamp, about everything that happened in that shoot. And yeah, so there were a couple who were diligent. I'm not trying to throw everyone under the bus, but for the most part, lazy and some outright malicious.
Yeah. Yes, if people want to learn more about it, I would encourage they go Google Martin Gottesfeld. You can look up HuffPost or Intercept for his, his piece on the conditions at MCC, and then also his story on serving alongside Chapo. That's a pretty interesting one that people can go find if they want to.
Well, for a minimum security guy, for a guy who was supposedly minimum security, the whole time.
Right. Yes, indeed. Well, Marty, thanks so much for joining us. Very much appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.